Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the fantasy horror film Before I Wake, directed by God, Mike Flanagan, and released on Netflix January 5th, 2018.
I know that Mike Flanagan is in your top 5 directors of all time. You guys over at Strange Indeed have covered so many of his previous works, or works that came out after this movie was released.
Yeah.
And we just covered a Mike Flanagan film not that long ago.
It feels like not that long ago, but it actually kind of was not like that recent either.
That's true.
Like,
yeah.
time goes by so fast.
I know, but I feel like we just covered it.
Mm-hmm.
We covered it back, like, I think it was in August. It's been a long time. But it feels recent.
Yeah. But it's never too soon. Or, yeah, too late, I guess it could be. But it's never too soon for more Flanagan. We gotta do this. There's still a couple more movies we can do, so. I
know. Should we wait until next season to cover them?
We'll see how that goes. I don't know if I want to wait that long. But we'll see.
So let's get started with a few production notes. That's how we always like to get things going on Run for Your Lives. So it was filmed in Alabama, including Fairhope, Alabama. It was written by Mike Flanagan and Jeff Howard. The original title was Somnia, but it was changed to Before I Wake in March 2015. Much to Flanagan's objections. It was, however, released internationally under the Somnia name. There's no budget info, which is customary with movies that end up getting launched on Netflix. But it did get a minimal box office release where it grossed $4.9 million. It's 97 minutes. Pake, give us a synopsis.
A couple foster an orphan child whose dreams and nightmares manifest physically as he sleeps.
Can you imagine your biggest dreams, the wonderful dreams that you've had coming true, but then also the nightmares?
Yeah, things would get really weird if all of my dreams came true. Because sometimes my dreams are just strange. So...
Yeah, mine too. Sometimes I'll wake up and think, where on earth did that come from?
Right.
And the nightmares, I'm always just wanting it to be over. So I definitely would not want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any manifestations of that. So no, would not be good. I mean, we cover so many of these monster creature feature movies plus disaster films. I'd be lying if I said that none of that ever wandered into my subconscious, right? Because it does. So I definitely do not want any of that coming together in real life.
Yep. I get like with TV shows, it would just be a lot of TV show characters and plots and things, because if I'm like binging through or watching shows where like there's another episode I need to watch, or I'm like, no, I need to go to bed, then I will just like dream of like trying to like work out, well, what's going to happen next? And like my dreams will just be like my brain trying to work out the show I'm watching. It literally happened the other night with The Circle.
Ooh, I love The Circle.
Because I was just like, well, I know this is happening and I know this, so how are they going to do this? And my brain, like, I'm dreaming of like stories, like the way things are going to come across on that, and like the characters on that. I'm like, why? It's, yeah.
You know what's funny is in the ads for that, and also on the show itself, where they are actually kept, the participants, it looks so bright and beautiful. But I've also seen pictures of it not so bright and beautiful.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, wow, they must have really brightened things up before they created those promotional videos.
Yes. Random tangent, but yeah.
Always, yeah.
So we're trying to avoid the emotional damage this movie causes, so we'll talk about a reality show instead.
Yes.
No.
Yes, it's easier to do that, because this one, I have to say, I watched it once and haven't watched it since until today, just before we recorded, and it is very emotional.
Yeah.
Even if you can't relate to the character because of what happened in their life, you can still connect with the character and go on this journey with them. And it's a roller coaster. It's dark at times, and there's a lot of sadness.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I forgot. Again, I don't know how I forget. It's Flanagan. But I was just like, oh yeah, I chose a movie to do this week that's going to have me just crying for an hour and a half. Cool. Thanks, Mike.
It does it so often. And it was only a couple of weeks ago that you wrapped up Midnight Club, which was a roller coaster of its own.
Yeah. It's just, man. Yeah. Mike Flanagan, it does blow me away every time I see something from it. I mean, I've seen this one before. I love this movie, but yeah, it's just, there's no other director and writer and creative mind that I can think of that has this kind of joint, effort of horror and like ways that like are legitimately and genuinely like scary. Like there's things that are going on where you're like, this is really scary to look at. And then in the next scene, you are so emotionally connected to things and crying and like, man, I can't think of anybody else who just like balances the terror and the emotional connection so well.
It's true, because he does balance that sense of loss. His characters in a lot of the work that he does have gone through some type of loss or are going through some type of life-changing situation. And he casts the right people because they pull you in immediately to caring about what happens to them. And then the next second, you see something that's just genuinely sweet. One of the moments that I liked was Mark taking Cody out and getting the bed for his room. Like, you get those tender moments and you're just kind of like, oh, and then the next minute you just remember and see everything, and it just brings up all of those emotions. Because I think it connects me to things that have happened in my life that remind me of those situations. And it's like opening up an old wound at times.
Oh, yeah. I mean, spoiler alert for people who are listening without watching the movie, which if you listen to this, it's going to be anyway at some point. So might as well right off the top. But yeah, I mean, doing an entire storyline that is a cancer related storyline. You know how you're going to destroy me? That's an easy one. You know, like.
Yeah, it's opening up old wounds that make things seem fresh again. Mm-hmm. Like all these things that you thought you dealt with. I think it just connects you to the emotion that you felt at that time. And I appreciate that. And I also am just like, damn it, Flanagan, you did it again. Like, you just keep doing this to me over and over.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, I've never been in a situation like Jesse and Mark were in this movie, but I could imagine somebody who has dealt with something like that, the loss of a child. This could be a very hard movie to watch. And, I definitely was thinking about that watching. I was like, if I was ever in that kind of situation in life, I don't know if I could even try to connect with this because it's too close. It's too real.
Yeah. And you had that story, but then you also had the story of Cody who lost his mother to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two stories that are just sad and devastating that they're processing through this movie. Now, we don't see Cody processing the death of his mother, but we see how that death affects him, even subconsciously, and what it brings to the forefront. So there's just a lot of emotion all around in this movie.
Yeah. And then, before we dive into a lot of characters and story stuff, I like that we just kind of, again, this general idea of things. We don't really plan to do that all the time. I think that's fine. Sometimes we don't, and that's fine. But yeah, just kind of as a setting the table for this thing. But not also just his balancing horror and emotional connection. But this movie is different from everything else he's done in the way that there are definitely major like horror vibes to this film, but it is also so chock full of fantastical and magical elements that add a lot to the visuals and the story as well.
Yeah. It's fantasy. Like there's a fantasy element to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we will end up covering Oculus further down the road. And that's another one of his films. And it's different from this. Like there's just different veins of things. But also it has that thread of a tragedy.
Yeah. So we can dive in a little more. I'm always happy to dive into the Flaniverse. It's always a good time.
I know you are. I knew you'd be excited to go down this road.
All right. So I guess the place to start is the Hobsons, Jesse. I have like Jesse and Mark separately as kind of our document is, but honestly, like I have like 3 notes for Mark on his own, and then a lot of it is just kind of under Jesse and then them together and their what they go through as a couple in this story. Yeah. So yeah, we meet Jesse and Mark Hobson, Kate Bosworth, Thomas Jane.
Yes.
Yeah, they are this couple who has lost their young son in a unfortunate and tragic accident, and they are in this part where we see them. They're feeling ready to move forward in life, and they are looking into fostering a child and kind of, sharing love with a child again, and letting another kid into their home to really try to build that family unit again and see how they are doing with that, which, I mean, that's great for them to open their hearts again in a very sore spot, but, to see, are we ready to try to move forward and bring, what we may not have had the opportunity to bring to somebody else who needs it now.
Mm-hmm. We learn later on, too, that one of the reasons behind this is that they cannot have kids. They can't have any additional children. We learn that in a conversation that Mark has with Cody when he's explaining to him what happened to Sean, their son.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course we do see a little bit, which is common in couples who lose a child. Jesse and Mark are feeling a little strained. There are some things there. I mean, it's never easy to process in any way, I'm sure. But they seem to be pretty well on a page. But then we see where there's some lines that they have to kind of draw and figure out between themselves throughout this story. So we do learn how Sean, their son, had passed. He said it was just this simple accident in a bathtub. It's one of those, again, I'm not a parent, but I have young children in my life. I work with young children. I know it's something to just kind of keep in mind, like for any person, that it's little things that you just don't even think about sometimes. It's the smallest thing of not having handrails in a tub and this young kid just not knowing how to, handle the situation, whatever happened, and so of course, as they're getting their home ready for Cody, it's one of the first things that they focus on is handrails. Yeah. And it's just those like little things. But also there's like little things on the other side, the good side, that really show you those like details that these are good parents, that bad things happen in great homes, like, that there's no blame to be thrown on anyone, that things happen and you see that they are detail oriented. I think it's the tiny things that really warmed my heart. You see, I mean, when Cody first shows up and he's very guarded and he's got that box and Marky's just like, or not, or don't give it to me. You know, it's your rules. You know, it's like move in things on your time, which, you know, like he does hand it to him, which is just sweet and amazing. But the one that really gets me, I think, is, you know, when Cody comes into the house and he starts taking his shoes off and they're like, oh, you don't have to do that. But he's been ingrained, whether it was something with his own home or like another foster home he had been in. But he was just like, oh, no, you do that. And to keep him in a comfortable place, to not push him off the path that he's on right there, what do? They all just take their shoes off and walk through the house with him. Just let's not rock the boat on things. Keep him comfortable. That's the most important thing right now, is just to like move at his pace. And I think that is really beautiful that they did that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they bring it down to his level. You know, they're really hyper focused on normalizing things so that he will feel at home. And this is a kid. I mean, we'll get into it more when we talk about Cody himself. He's been through a lot in his life.
Yeah.
And for him, being all over the place and not really having the stability that he needs, you have to wonder what's going through his mind.
Right.
But like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about his character.
Yeah. And of course, part of his character is his abilities, his gift. And I mean, that definitely plays a big part also in the story. And then, you know, the arc of Jesse and Mark. So definitely, you know, talk about that. We see the first time that they are aware, or the first time they see what he is capable of. They're sitting up at night watching a movie together, which I didn't catch what movie exactly it was. You might have that somewhere. I couldn't find it, but I didn't look too far either. It's just like, if I can on a surface level, and no, that's fine. I might come around to it at some point, but picking up on the things is like all of the dialogue going on in the movie that they're watching. I mean, it's all talking about ghosts and perceived hysteria, you know, like, is what you're seeing really what you're seeing? And
so that movie that they were watching is 1959's House on Haunted Hill.
Okay. Yeah. Vincent Price. All right. Yeah. I haven't seen that in a very long time.
It's been quite a while. I mean, it's one we could cover on this podcast. Maybe I'll add it to the list. We like to go back in time sometimes and look at those movies. Yeah.
But you know, all of the dialogue in that part of that movie that they're watching is all, you know, is what you're seeing really what you're seeing? Is that really what there are? There ghosts? Is it something else? Is it, which is, you know, Flanagan just making very purposeful choices about even the smallest things that are going on in any scene, you know? And so as they're watching this, that's when the butterflies appear and one evil little moth that bites Jesse and flies up to the ceiling and kind of spreads into this shadowy portal thing, which they don't even notice. They also don't even notice the Canker Man just standing in the doorway behind them. Early hidden ghost kind of stuff that Flanagan was getting into even before the Haunting series on Netflix, the Haunting shows.
I know. I started taking notes at that point, like, okay, this is like day 1 or day 2. Oh, day 2. The first sight of the ghost in the doorway. Then we get the butterflies. The doors slam. Jesse sees Sean kind of in the shadows.
Yeah.
Things happen when Cody goes to sleep.
Yeah. And then they just disappear immediately when Cody wakes up. They don't know that yet. I think on somebody's first watch this movie, you don't know that yet.
No.
But yeah, so yeah, later that night it gets even weirder with Jesse feeling at least that she saw Sean. And yeah, that whole scene there is just full of, there's some jump scares mixed in with like the kind of hidden ghost, or like, you know, like, is that really like, done in such a way, you're like, yeah, there's definitely a little boy standing there in the living room, but also it's so covered in shadows that like maybe there's not, you know,
Right.
like it's really well done that way.
You question yourself, did I just see that? And while the character is questioning herself too, like, oh, I don't know, you know, was that really there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, and that whole scene is very tense. And then she's telling her group therapy, you know, leader, that therapist, about it, and kind of we get a lot of those ideas of, you know, the things that you perceive or think you see when you're not sleeping, which is kind of a red herring kind of thing. But I was noticing this whole idea. I was like, yeah, I'm sure this group therapy leader is super intelligent and knows his stuff, and he's probably very helpful. But also he comes across as very pretentious and patronizing.
He does.
And maybe that's why Mark stopped going.
I'm starting to wonder that too, because this one particular quote that I actually wrote down because I just wanted to bring it up. He says, waking dreams are conversations that we're having with ourselves. Every character in your dreams is actually you. And when we're trying to bury uncomfortable emotions or ideas that where we feel threatened, sometimes the only outlet they have is our subconscious. The question is, what are you trying to say to yourself? And I'm just thinking, that's really not what she's dealing with.
It's not what she's dealing with, but It does turn out to be exactly what Cody's doing.
Yes, as part of this gift that he has.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, just crying moments, which, of course, the first one that really gets me is the home video, the DVD of that Christmas with Sean. Which just watching it, just like the emotions that are in there are definitely hard. But also, it's a hard watch for a different reason. Is because we know Jesse's motives here. That she's running this as kind of an experiment, which is, in all honesty, emotionally manipulative. Like she's not trying to be sinister about it, but that is what it is.
And Mark even points it out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
When she's saying, well, he needs to sleep, he says to her, this isn't okay. Like what we're trying to do. It's not, are you doing this for you or for him?
Right. Yeah. Cause these things, yeah. I mean, the DVD idea, you know, well, if Cody's dreams are becoming real, then if I show him home videos of Sean, then, you know, before he goes to bed, then we should be able to hear his voice again because Cody knows it and he's thinking about it and those things are there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, yeah, that next day where we see Jesse's hung up all these extra pictures of Sean around. And that's when Mark really sees what she's doing and knows that it's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not healthy for her or for Cody at all.
No. She says, oh, you know, it's going to help us heal. And he goes, this is not healing.
No.
And I perfectly agree with him. It's not healthy. It's obsessive. It's holding on to something that's not there. And like he says, kind of this abuse, it may not look like physical or mental or emotional abuse,
but it
as
is.
most people would see it. But she is using Cody for a different desire that has nothing to do with Cody's needs. At that point, she's using him as a tool and not a child to be cared for.
And at this point, what we don't know is this has happened to Cody before. He's been through this before. What really struck me with these events when Cody's sleeping is that he can't create anything new based on what he has seen or learned. He can only recreate what's already happened. Like if he sees the video. Because when they first get to see Sean, which is before they see the video, all that Cody has seen at that point was a picture of Sean. And the little boy acts very much like the boy in the picture. He really doesn't move. He's just
wearing
standing
the same
there.
outfit, and he's just
same
standing
outfit.
there. Yeah.
He's just standing there. And with Christmas, it was very much the same thing. It recreated the scene from Christmas.
Right.
It wasn't until, the Canker Man got into it that we saw some differences, just because that was the terror and the scariness of the movie.
Right.
A lot of it came from this villain from Cody's subconscious. At least that's what I started believing.
Yeah.
This is part of the subconscious, part of the feelings that he hasn't processed, part of how he's trying to reconcile the things he saw his mother go through.
Well, we get the reveal at the end of the movie, but as to explain the canker man, I mean, it all just comes from a, not really misunderstanding, but it is a young child's version and imagination of being explained to what cancer was and what happened. It is just this monster that came in and devoured his mother and took him from her, or took her from him. And so over time and subconsciously, that's what this has morphed into, is this evil creature that comes in and takes what you hold dear, or takes.
Yeah. And I know from having family members who died of cancer, it feels very much like that.
Oh yeah. It's a very apt connection that he's made. It makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a disease that discriminates, and it's really, it's so tragic, what you watch a person go through, what their body goes through. And we kind of got to see some of that later in the movie in some flashbacks and storytelling. And I found that to be really realistic.
Yeah.
And that made me emotional because it connected to emotions that I don't connect with very often.
Right. Again, props to Flanagan for being able to find a supernatural way to express common themes and fears and things that people deal with in everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rough. Thinking, man, there's just... I watch this movie and I'm trying to find the joy, and I'm looking and seeing Cody in his new home, and you look for those things, because otherwise there are those other emotional things that just bring you to a different place.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to notice with Jesse and Mark talking kind of those first nights, again, we never get the exact scenario of what happened with Sean. I mean, we have an idea. We know what happened. But as far as, what led around to it, what were the surrounding circumstances, whatever, we don't know. But we do see that, Mark is bothered by this, again, part of, I won't let you take him away from me again.
Mm-hmm.
That Jesse says kind of out of, not really anger, but just out of desperation and frustration.
Yes.
And I remember the therapist saying something about, well, what guilt or what problem is it that you're actually trying to deal with? And so we see, is there something where she's maybe blaming Mark for Sean's death in some form, some way?
Yeah, I wondered if maybe he was supposed to be watching Sean in the tub and got pulled away. Again, the tragedy, all we really know is that it happened in a bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that could happen at any time to anyone. I mean, to any child. Which I think makes this even more realistic by going there, going in that direction.
Yeah.
It's not some fantastical thing that was, dreamt up by Mike Flanagan that would never, ever happen to anyone. This has happened to families.
Yeah.
And I think that just makes it even more sad, and connects you to, those feelings of, oh, wow, this is something that could happen and has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. We see Jesse's decline, I guess, as she just continues to kind of go down this really unhealthy path for her and Cody, to the point that, we see she works as a nurse, and while she's at work, she is getting these sleeping pills prescribed by a doctor for Cody. I mean, he needs to sleep. It is very crucial for a young kid. But her motives are not just purely about Cody. To the point where we see where she's sneaking these sleeping pills into his cake. I was like, that's kind of a low there. You know, like I can see, you know, hiding pills from kids that are just like not going to take them unless like, you know, you do what you have to do, but she doesn't even talk to Cody about it at first. But then it's also that she's hiding it from Mark.
Yeah.
Because you know that he has a problem with the reasons you're doing the things, because it's not about Cody's health. It's about your own desires and this thing that you're hung up on that you can't let go of.
And the question, I mean, him questioning, well, what did you do? Why not be honest? If you were really concerned about Cody's sleep, you would have talked to Mark. This is about hiding it from Mark because you don't want him to know how far you're willing to go to get, you know, to be exposed to Sean again. I mean, she doesn't give the doctor a lot of information. He's basically putting him on this pill called Zolpidem, which is a pediatric Ambien. He doesn't really know what's going on. He just assumes that this is a child who has been through a lot and needs to sleep. Well, yes, he does need to sleep, but maybe we need to start talking about the elephant in the room, which is shit goes down when he goes to sleep, and we need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And really, Jesse never got the opportunity to talk to Mark about this situation.
Yeah, because those sleeping pills really came back to bite her in the ass, didn't they? You know, where, they can't get Cody to wake up, and now she's dealing with this, like, horrifying gunk-spewing version of Sean, and the canker man himself, which I will say the effect where Mark slaps Cody across the face to wake him up, and he wakes up for, like, literally just a second and then passes back out.
Yes!
And so you have this canker man, like, going away, like, vanishing into smoke, but then it's just reforming immediately.
Yeah.
And, like, it's actually really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. The way that they did it was cool.
Yeah, but, then it just leads to a whole tragic, end of Mark, which, man, to jump to one of my 3 notes about him. But yeah, I mean, where we see, like, the canker man absorbing Mark, and then he's just gone, which is devastating because he truly was an incredible person. Like, there was just, like, nothing negative you could say about him. And then I think maybe one of the most tragic parts of this movie is then what is Mark considered, after all of this great person that he is? He's just taken. He's just gone. And the police are even considering him as a suspect for Tate's disappearance. And they're thinking he's just, like, had been beating his wife. And then it's just all of this stuff that is not true about him. There's just like, but there's nothing you can do about it. You can't prove otherwise because nobody's going to believe, oh no, the kid's dream came out and ate him.
No, that's not something that people want. Cold hard facts. They want proof they can see in front of them. They're not going to believe something supernatural happened. They're just not.
Right. But, Jessie, this is a big shift for her as a character where we see, I won't say that her actions caused this because, I mean, this was a problem that Cody was going through anyway.
Yeah.
These are things that, so it's not like she caused the issue, but I think she realizes the importance of finding an actual solution and really caring for Cody versus just viewing him as
a vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah, to bring things to life.
And so she brings it upon herself to really find answers and do what she can. Even though Cody's been taken back from her, she goes back over to the foster agency to talk with Natalie. Which, I mean, come on, Natalie. Like, there's a clear pattern when she swipes the file, Cody's file from her, and she's looking through it. Like, at some point, you have to consider it's more than, like, a string of bad foster families. There is a pattern of things, of people disappearing.
Yes. A whole family disappeared. A wife disappeared. And a man is in a psychiatric facility.
Right.
Because of it. You might have wanted to share some of that ahead of time, but it didn't
the way
happen.
she just said they were a bad fit, which is Waylon Young. And then the next one, and then they abandoned him, and he was all alone in the home.
No. The canker man came and took him away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Man.
So this file does lead Jesse to Waylon Young, who is the foster father from the beginning of the movie, with a gun pointed at Cody, which, again, when you first time you're watching this, you're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we learn about those things, that Waylon's wife was taken as well, and the other foster parents who abandoned, quote unquote, were also victims of this canker man.
Did you recognize the guy that played Waylon?
I did.
And where have you seen him before?
My first thing to jump to is Ray Donovan, strangely enough. But
but we've covered another film that he's been in.
Yes.
On this podcast early on. One of our more popular episodes. Because he played Jason on The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, because we get his story kind of through him, which is very intense. And we see that, it's the same thing with the butterflies, and it's kind of at first like very beautiful, magical kind of setting. And then when Katie, his wife, gets sick, it's just the flu. But still, it's enough to, set off these subconscious things in Cody about his mother's sickness and disease and decline. And it just kind of triggers this whole situation with the canker man. It might have been the first time the canker man really happened the way it did.
Yes, because he went to stay with another family after he stayed with Waylon and his wife. Because Waylon pointed out, if I had done what I needed to do, your husband would still be here, and so would the other family. What he's talking about was shooting Cody, because that's what he was trying to do. He felt the only way to stop it was to shoot Cody and kill him.
And he even requests that Jesse finish what he couldn't do. And she refuses. Thankfully. And, as she's going through the files and the things that she finds, she does her own digging on Cody's mother. And through what she finds, which again we see, spelled out at the very end when she's talking to Cody, but through what she learns, she takes off back to the foster home that he's in. She kind of has this plan, this idea in mind, and it cuts back to a line that I really enjoyed early in the movie about, I think, like that first night that Cody is there at the house and Jesse is talking to him, and she mentions the witch in the window and things like that, where she says something about, something isn't going to be as scary once you understand it. Yes.
I liked that line too, that I actually wrote that down as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're a kid, things are scary. Even when they're, not to adults.
Yeah. And so this idea carries over kind of to the end of the movie here, where through looking through these files and things about his mother, she realizes the things that Cody doesn't understand that are creating the scary monster.
Yeah.
And if she is able to explain those things, like the witch in the window being a branch that's a little too long, once you're able to really break those things down and help him understand the core of what he's scared of, that scary thing won't come back anymore.
Yeah. It's like looking under your bed. Like, parents will look in the closet for you, or they'll look under your bed, just trying to get you to go to bed and go to sleep because they don't want you to be scared. And she's really trying to soothe his fears. This is before she had any idea of what's going on.
Yeah, she was a little late to the foster home. He had already been put back to sleep, which, okay, she's like looked at poorly, and the police are like, why would you drug him, when she gave him a sleeping pill, which was prescribed by a doctor specifically for him. Let's get that, like, it's like her motives for doing it were not great, but like, as a parent, she had every right to do it in a way. But yet, foster home over here is just going to inject him with a needle and syringe full of who knows what, and that's
to
fine.
Make him go to sleep. I know, and she did contemplate giving him the pill at all. Like, you could see on her face that she I don't know that she wanted to do it, but I think she wanted to do it. Like, it's... Yeah. I feel like she wanted to, but she didn't want to at the same time.
Right. She's conflicted knowing, like, are my reasons for doing it great? No. But then she can justify it with, well, he does need to sleep. So, there's...
Sometimes you're just looking for some little reason to do something. Mm-hmm. And even if it's not a really big one, you talk yourself into it. It's like, okay, yeah. That's the sign I needed. I need to do this.
Totally fine now. Yes, but she heads off. I feel like her plan was to get to the foster home and just somehow get access to Cody and talk with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, when she does arrive, it is a little too late. He's asleep, and moth stares. That's kind of her first big clue. Yeah, so she's making her way through. I mean, nobody in the foster home is there. They're all chrysalis to the walls, and it's all, which, we see Natalie, Annabeth Gish, as also there, which is good. She didn't just get eaten.
Yeah, I had forgotten when I was watching it this time. I don't know who makes it out and who doesn't at the end, because it's been a while.
Yeah, but Jesse's kind of bothered by seeing the other kids in the foster home are all wrapped up to the wall, but then she remembers Cody's fascination with the butterflies and things, which everything that happens comes from his mind. So that's why there's the butterflies, is because his obsession and stuff with that. And so she remembers Cody while looking at his butterfly book with Mark saying something about the chrysalises, keeps them safe until they're grown. And so saying that, looking at the kids, she knows they're okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, her worst nightmares come through in the form of Cody's nightmares while she's headed towards him. Since Cody learned how Sean died, that part of his dreams is going to be there and kind of haunt Jessie on her way to Cody, which is supremely fucked up. But she is able to walk away from that.
So rough to watch that.
Yeah. But Cody's in a deep sleep, and I think things are getting even deeper and more psychological. There's this psychological level that his dreams have reached into.
Yeah. I think it transcended anything that he had expressed subconsciously before.
Yeah, it's his very deep subconscious is coming out now, because we see that while Cody was at the house with them, he was picking up on things. Mm-hmm. He knew what was going on. He knew what Jessie was doing. And we see that in this vision, this thing that she sees here in his dream of Cody being there, but then this eyeless mother, which is her, coming in and using him to reshape the way she sees Sean. It's very disturbing. And then we even have Mark there, that Mark kind of paid for the ultimate price for all of these things in the end. And it's all this kind of subconscious stuff that Cody knows what was going on. Because even on the TV behind them is just this thrashing in the bathtub continuing on.
Yeah. It's haunting just to see that. And then for her to have to see it in front of her face while she's trying to save Cody and stop what's going on, it just puts her through such emotional, mental strain.
Yeah. Well, her knowing that Cody saw what she was doing.
Yeah.
So again, skipping over a little bit, but when she has him back at home and when she's showing him the journals and things from his mother and explaining everything that happened, she makes a point to say, I was using you and I am aware of that and I'm sorry and it will not happen again. And, she knows he knows, and let's go ahead and clear that. Let's talk about that. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, she was still grieving her son, which I don't think we ever really got a timeline of when that was that it happened.
Right.
And now she's lost her husband. And so she's going to have to deal with that as well. And try to raise a child at the same time. Like, it's, going forward, it's going to be a really interesting life for her to like, sometimes I wish we could have seen just a little bit more, because I'd like to know how she reconciles everything so that she can move forward.
Right.
Because this is, I mean, anytime something unexplainable happens, which, no, I don't believe that there are beings called the Cankerman who go around and do this in real life. But sometimes things happen that aren't as easily explained, and moving on from that can be a bit of a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I do like the way that, Jesse goes in and is able to see. I can't put in great words to explain what happened. It's kind of hard to really explain it. But, she like sees through Cody's dreams to him, to his core, to take away that fear that was, fueling that nightmare. Whereas the Cankerman is there, but instead she just brings this like toy butterfly that Andrea gave Cody as a baby, the actual one. It's there, and it's, again, subconscious to Cody's mind, where he, as a baby, subconsciously is connected to that toy and realizes there's love there, there's something good there, and it kind of stops the Cankerman. And again, like you said, all of those dreams are just you in different ones, is what the therapist had said. You brought that up, and so she's able to bring it back to just Cody, and it being Cody, and kind of just kills that nightmare and ends it there. And she takes him home, which I love that, she's walking out, and then Natalie's just like, hey, wait. And then she's like, no, I'm taking him home.
Yeah.
We're not
staying here any longer for any more of your foolishness. You don't understand what's happening. We are going home. Like, without saying it, that's what she meant when she said, I'm taking him home.
Yeah. And I'm sure Natalie at that point was like, screw the system, screw whatever. Like, we will work on the paperwork later.
Yes.
You were able to bring him back from what had just happened to everyone in this building. So, what? I think maybe your hands probably are the best that he's in.
Yes. Because she's not going to give up on him. And I think that's something that he got to see as well. Like, even though he had been taken away and taken to this facility group home, she didn't give up on him. She came to get him. And given that his previous experiences in foster homes did not go well, this, to me, was like, it had to be an indication to him that, wow, this is the right place. This feels right. To where, at the end, she's telling him a story, and he calls her mom.
Yeah. Oh.
And that, much. It's like, oh my gosh, they've transcended all of these things that were obstacles from the beginning to get to this point where they are. And now she's going to rebuild her life with her son. And like his mom, she embraces this power he has, but she's not going to abuse it.
Right.
And I think that's a great arc to get to. Absolutely.
And, like I was mentioning, as it being, taking the nightmare, taking what's scary and helping you understand it and explain it. And that takes away the fear of it. And that's what she does with this, story. So, his mother developing cancer when he was little. And then again, the way it was explained to him makes it just seem like this monster that comes in and ate her. And, all the chemo and treatment and the toll of the disease, the last images of his mother in his head definitely make her look like a different being.
Yes.
And then, her last words being, I am always with you. And then just as it all developed over time from that young brain into, things get fuzzy when you're that young. And so his brain's developing around all these little mismatched pieces.
Yes.
And it all just kind of develops into the Cankerman over time. This subconscious fear and trauma that comes to life through his ability.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because Waylon even said when he was abusing Cody's power, Cody didn't remember his wife quite the way that she was.
Yeah.
Because it's what Cody remembers. It's all tied to what's in his head.
Yeah.
And what he can remember.
Mm-hmm. Which I did notice, the nurse that lifts little Cody up into his mother's arms there in the hospital bed was Mike Flanagan himself.
Yes.
I was just watching that, like, while you're, like, going through that story, and then I was like, oh, hey, there's Mike. And there he is.
Yes. He did have a cameo.
I like seeing when he does cameos and stuff. He had a cameo in Midnight Mass that was fun. Again, I think on Strange Indeed we talked about his TikTok. Just go follow Mike Flanagan on TikTok. He's hilarious.
He is.
So he like pitches a whole spinoff for his one thing cameo in Midnight Mass, and it's hilarious. But yeah. So I love that. And then I was gonna say, I was like, man, Flanagan enjoys the heterochromatic eyes as part of the story. But I think it's just coincidence that maybe he wrote in after with kind of some of the little things, because Kate Bosworth really does have heterochromia. That is just her. That's her. I love it. It's super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of really the notes I have of Jesse. Kind of spans the story there. As far as Mark, like I said, I have like little offshoot kind of thoughts and quips. Like, how stable of a home is Cody really going to have? His new foster father, Mark, is an officer for the vegan police. So, you know, it's a tough job. Because I will always bring that stuff up when I have an opportunity.
Yes. Another reference. I feel like we need to start a bingo game from now on.
Anytime anybody who was in Scott Pilgrim is in another movie, I'm gonna mention their characters.
I know, and I feel like we should. I think we should make up bingo cards, and then see if any of our listeners win.
Right,
based on what you say.
Right, and then also we see Mark is a gamer, so win as a foster father there. I know he's an Xbox guy, not a PlayStation, so I'll try not to hold that against him. But you know.
But he's
wanting to play video games with Cody, so you know that's a big win in my book.
Well, and he even said, "I'll show you my Xbox, and maybe you know what? Do we get a Wii? Do you want a Wii?" Like he's talking about getting whatever Cody wants,
right?
And I really did love the scene of them. Like, Cody stays home from school, and Mark doesn't hesitate. They go out for the day to get stuff. Like
the line, like, before they go out, because he says, hey, do you want, he's like, you know, he's feeling sick. Says, do you want to go out and do a little shopping with me? And he just kind of says, like, I don't think I deserve it. And he says, if there's one thing I know, you deserve a good day. And I was like, oh, Mark.
And he took him out, and they got that bed, and I'm thinking, okay, that's one way to solve any creatures that want to get under your bed. There's no place for them.
And then at the end of that day, when he puts him to bed, what does he say? This was the best day so far. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, man. It didn't stay that way, but, you know, it was till that point.
It was special. I think the connection that he made with them happened so quickly. Mm-hmm. And with Mark, I think it was maybe more genuine at first than with Jesse, just because I think Jesse got caught up in his abilities or in his special gift. But Mark, I think he just wanted Cody to have anything he wanted and be happy because he'd been through so much. Even more than they knew. Like, he went through a lot. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so if you have anything else on the Hobsons.
You know, I think there was one note I took. Of course, Jesse's cleaning up Cody's room when she finds his stash of stay awake supplies. Because that's part of what was in that box. Not only this beautiful book on butterflies, basically underneath is like, I don't know, energy drinks and like no-dos and anything to keep him awake. And he does try to explain it, but it doesn't I feel like they just, well, they got it when it was too late, basically. That, him staying awake was an important thing. I feel like he gets in a mindset, and maybe even the bullying that took place at school, like, triggered some of it too. Yeah, I feel like we're ready to move on to Cody. We have to.
Cody Morgan. Teeny tiny little baby Jacob Tremblay.
So man. Little.
It's crazy to think about, because I've seen Jake in a lot of things, just as as a young actor. I say young, I mean he's probably like 16 something now. I don't know for sure, but I mean it's crazy how time like goes by so fast with certain things. But I've seen him in so many things, because he was like, even as a young kid, he's a very like hard working actor in all kinds of stuff, from horror to comedy to TV shows and movies and everything. Like, he's just popping up everywhere.
Yeah, he is.
Including, Flanagan has worked with him before. Actually, it was after this. This was the first time they worked together, and then Flanagan had him back in another project.
Oh,
which,
imagine.
Man, what he put Jacob Tremblay through in Dr. Sleep, if anybody God.
That was rough. That was definitely rough. Rough to watch.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, so it's always good to see Jacob Tremblay. But but Cody, just foster home to foster home, because people, at first we think, there's something off with him. People can't deal with him.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily that. It seems like the, people that couldn't keep up with him, it really wasn't their choice.
No.
Necessarily.
No, they were taken out of the picture.
I mean, Waylon could have handled things different.
Yes.
But yeah. So we have Natalie explaining him to Jesse, which, says he has sleep issues. And I was like, yeah, that's one way to put it.
I mean, she has her own that she even talks about when we first meet her at her support group, where Peter, the leader of the group, says somnia is Latin for dreams. Insomnia simply means no dreams. What else is a child but our dreams, our hopes manifest? Yeah. And it's true. I mean, and she has trouble sleeping, so she totally understands.
Yeah. Yeah, but when we first see Cody at their home, and he really is just like the sweetest kid imaginable. Mm-hmm. Like, clearly he's got so much trauma, but he's facing this situation of meeting the Hobsons and going into their home with so much kindness and trust. I mentioned the scene earlier, where he kind of pulls the box away from Mark at first, but then he does end up handing it to him. And it's, even after all of these horrifically failed foster families, it's kind of him saying, I am giving you all of myself right now. It's in your hands. I'm choosing to trust that this could be different. And he's such an emotionally strong kid. Yeah.
And well-mannered. I mean, even you mentioned it earlier, taking his shoes off, even though that's not required. He still did it. Mm-hmm. Shoes make floors dirty.
Yeah. And he says that pineapple pizza is his favorite. So I knew immediately he's a very smart and good kid, obviously.
Yes. We're not going to get...
That proves it. That proves how smart he is and how good of a person he is.
We're not going to get into a debate on pizza again. That is one that could make this podcast 6 hours long. So we're not going to do that.
All I'm saying is, if you want proof that Cody is a very smart and good kid, look at his pizza choices. Mm-hmm. He's got the energy drinks or sodas and caffeine pills and all this stuff and again, it's like where he says, he doesn't want the canker man coming. He's talking to Jesse, and it's that line, the canker man ate my mom, which, having seen this movie before, definitely hits a little different watching that again on that part. And you're like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yep.
And then, we see him paying a lot of attention to the family photo in the living room and asking about Sean. So, of course, that's what is on his mind when he drifts off to sleep. So yeah, we talked about, we get the blue butterflies, but also Sean dressed as he is in the photo, which creates just a lot of heartbreak there because, they experience this return of Sean together only for him to vanish like he is being taken away from them again. And all Cody can really say for it is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because we know that everything that happens in these dreams, Cody knows what he's dreaming. He knows what he's seeing. These dreams are manifest where it's kind of him, because we even have that moment like the Christmas thing where Jesse looks at Sean and just goes, Cody, is that you? And he turns and looks at her like, in a way it is. It's Cody manifesting these things.
Yeah.
And, when he's kind of apologizing at breakfast the next morning and has this look on his face of like, oh no, here we go again. Like it's all going downhill. And they say, oh, we're not mad at you. We're not mad. And he's like, I kind of see him like likely thinking, sure. Yeah. They all say that at first.
Yes.
Then
it goes downhill from there.
Yeah,
it does. I like how his dreams manifest based on what he knows. Like first it's the picture and then it's the video. Like he's not able to manipulate things, but he recreates situations that he's seen, and his dreams grow and change based on the more information he gets as he's going.
Yeah. And then of course the dark side of it, that trauma, that fear creeps its way into even the good parts. And that's what we see, the Christmas tree and the light butterflies and Sean, the Canker Man appears through that with the kind of butterflies forming these lights in his eyes as it just kind of creeps its way to Cody. I am always with you, which has a very different feel to it. That's kind of how he feels about that, not realizing that those words were not meant to be ominous. It's just how things have warped in his mind over time.
Yeah. Those were meant to be words of love.
Yeah.
From his mother, on her deathbed, really. To say those things because she just wanted him to know that even though she wasn't going to be there in person, I mean, what it means is she'll always love him. And he should know that she's always there for him, even though she can't be there in person.
Yeah. So he's made a friend at school, which is
Annie,
very cute,
I
very
like
sweet.
her.
And she's also concerned for him in some ways with him drawing and some of the things, or his like pinching himself to not sleep, and she's just like, what is wrong with you? But she's concerned. And then he also has a bully. Apparently this Tate kid just sucks.
There's always a bully.
But that's where we see the dangerous part of Cody's ability for the first time. He takes a nap in the classroom during recess, and then I guess Tate goes in there to just kind of torment him. But instead, the Canker Man appears and devours Tate. So there's that. And Annie, I think is the little girl's name.
Yes.
Sees that, and it's probably kind of the end of them for a little while. She's like, she doesn't really talk to him anymore after that. It was like she was trying to be this good friend. It was like, well, he can summon a demon that eats people, so maybe I shouldn't be friends with him anymore. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, he never went back to school after that, so.
Yeah, probably that
too. I don't blame him. I mean, why? Oh.
Yeah. Seeing a lot of these scenes with the Canker Man, especially in the school, my first thought is like, is it bad CGI? Like, is it CGI that just doesn't hold up very well? But even when it's close encounter, like there in the foster home with Jesse, where it's clearly like prosthetics and like a suit that's made, it still doesn't look good or quite right. But I don't think it's a problem. I think it was done on purpose. I'm going to choose with Mike Flanagan to believe it was done on purpose because it looks like a kid's drawing or a kid's imagination of something come to life. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So it's going to have these weird things that are not lined up quite right. And it's not going to move quite right. And it's...
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Well, I mean, Flanagan is the one who brought us the Broke Neck Lady. Okay, which was incredible. So I have to think he did this on purpose. I don't think it was meant to be a special effects slight in any way.
Yeah, so Cody's trying to keep himself up with any means necessary, which I was like, Cody, my dude, that is not how you do coffee. That's going to be awful. Yeah. Like, as I'm like talking to this scene, I'm like, yeah. See that look on your face? Don't even try to pretend you like it. No, homie, that's not.
No.
But then even that poorly executed coffee did not work well because he still fell asleep and didn't even realize he did. It was this kind of, he thought he was awake and he's dreaming, but he did end up on the floor. So kind of goes back again to that group therapy thing of like the, what did he call it? The waking sleep kind of thing.
Waking dreams.
Waking dreams. Yeah. Like kind of sleepwalking or where he thinks he's fully awake, but his dream that aren't REM sleep is still kicked in and things are happening, including dead dream Tate, which we even see after he does wake up that those scratches on his legs were real, that these things are affecting. And then of course Jesse waking up to see Sean projecting Cody's thoughts. The whole, I'm awake, this can't be happening. I'm awake, this can't be happening. I'm awake. Because we see Cody's not saying anything in his sleep.
Right.
So the things that his brain is just that repeating, I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm awake, this can't be happening. It's being projected into Sean, and that's what Jesse's seeing, which was very unsettling. That kid, the kid that played Sean, I don't have his name or anything on it, but like, just, that was an incredible job. Those wide eyes, just like terrified. And I think he did an incredible job with that.
I know. Where does Flanagan find them?
Right. He really does. He finds some great young actors and actresses in his things that I've seen go on, do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah. I feel like it's a great starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Or, a great jumping off point if you are a child actor and want to quickly be able to show how much range you have.
Yeah.
Being a Mike Flanagan project.
Absolutely. I mean, like with Violet McGraw, he brought back and used in Dr. Sleep after Haunting of Hill House. And then I think she's in that new like Megan movie that's coming out, which I have no interest in myself, but.
I'm going to see it. Chris and I are going to see it. It seems real bizarre. Right. But we'll see.
But yeah, she's done a lot of great stuff. Her twin in Hill House, Julian Hilliard, has gone out. He's Marvel.
He's a Marvel Universe kid.
Doctor Strange, like he's really blown up. He's in the MCU.
Well, Violet is as well.
Yeah, she was the young Yelena.
Yelena, yeah, young Yelena. Yeah.
So they've both gone on to do MCU and big things like that, which is cool. Again, I always love it. Name drop time. He's like doing that panel with those two kids when they were so little, like right after Hill House.
I know.
And then like seeing where they've gone from there. So I was even like keep up with Julian, like in his mom times when I was watching WandaVision and he popped up. Mm-hmm. I think I've told this story before. It's just like sending a message to his mom being like, holy crap, he's in the MCU, and her messaging me back. Like he is so excited he hasn't been able to tell anybody, like
so amazing.
But to see them with such big things, or the story with Violet is talking to her at the convention and just like she's sitting there drawing and I was just like, hey Violet, what you working on? She goes, I'm just drawing the bit neck lady, and I'm like, okay, that's not creepy at all. But yeah, so Flanagan's just got this eye for stuff. Even like Midnight Club, since we just covered that, like they're not like little, but a lot of like, young adults and teenagers.
Yeah.
But a lot of them I had not really seen before, and I'm already like, I can't wait to see what they do next.
I know. It is. It's a great jumpstart for careers, because he puts them through so much in a role that you have to have a big range to be able to pull it off.
Right. But where was I on notes? See that. I'm awake, this can't be happening. That's why I was like, I don't know who that kid is. I haven't seen him really go on anywhere else, but that scene, I was like, okay, yeah, he nailed that. So Cody doesn't like Mark talking about the police incident, so he's trying to swerve the conversation.
Like, how did Sean
Race Car
die?
Bed didn't do the trick, so let me break out the how did Sean die card. That might do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to come up with ways to deflect the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because he saw what happened, but he can't explain it.
Right.
They hadn't, at that point, seen the Canker Man.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And then, so I've got, like, 2 other little notes. So, yeah, the giant sleeping needle syringe, whatever. Which I was like, immediately, you're like, well, he's already so traumatized right now that putting him to sleep right now in the state he's in, it's not going to go
No.
well. What do you think you're going to create? And that's exactly what happens.
Because I do think that the appearance of the Canker Man, some of it was tied to his emotional state at the time, because we look at him getting bullied at school and then the bully disappearing. It's all that, those emotions.
Yeah. And then it's dealing with, oh, now the police are here and I'm being looked at. And now that Mark and Jesse know what he's capable of, do they fear him? Are they mad at him? And it's that trauma and it's that fear that, like, manifests itself into the Canker Man.
Yeah.
Just things were going well when he was like, oh, I have a new family and a new home and everything's nice and they're so nice to me and they do all these great things and it's like maybe a good start. And so the dreams are great. But then he starts being manipulated and things start going a little south and we see where it leads.
Like, he knows the signs that take him down that path.
Yeah. So then, just with the ending is kind of this bedtime story that Jesse is giving him, which really, I mean, she's telling the story. Her bedtime story is what we just watched. This movie is this story of them is a boy who needed a mom and a sad mom who needed a son. And as he says, it seems like it can't be a happy story, but it has a happy ending. But where does it go? What's possible?
Right.
And I do like the open-ended finish to this story, where she kind of is giving him this dream idea of, could those who are gone come back?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. As Cody gets older, what are the parameters of his abilities? It does seem eventually that, because at the end he sit there and he's manifesting these butterflies and the lights, but we see he's not sleeping, that he is awake as things are happening. So eventually, is he going to become powerful enough? Does he get to a point where anything he imagines becomes true, whether he's asleep or awake, where the limits are his imagination at any point, where does it go? And I kind of like that, we're just left with who knows.
Yes.
That's for you to kind of imagine and decide. And because it's a different story at that point.
Yes, it is a different story. It's like a different chapter. And frankly, I'm fine to have it open-ended and not have them try to do a sequel.
Oh, I hope they never do. Yeah, that's part of me is would it be cool to see bring him back older?
Yeah.
See what he's doing. But it's not a Flanagan project at that point. It's some kind of weird fantasy superhero thing where he's got the ability to imagine things. It's a whole different story. It's a whole different end. So it's it doesn't even need to be touched.
No, leave it alone.
Imagine.
Don't reboot it. Don't make a sequel. Don't make a prequel. Leave it alone.
Mm-hmm. That is thing I got.
Are you sure? You don't have anything else?
Nope.
I did wonder, there was one question, and this is the only thing I have left. What was the significance of removing all of the references to Sean from their house, except that one photo?
I think
I'm not sure why
what I read
it
as. What I read it as it was because he says clean slate as they're pulling the things down, as it's much like they're not trying to replace or get rid of Sean, but it is very much like if we're ready to move forward. Because I don't like using the term move on, it's time to forget it and move, but move forward. We're obviously they're going to always have this love for Sean and these memories, and he was there for the time he was there.
Yes.
But if they're moving forward and they're trying to foster and adopt a new child eventually, hopefully, whatever their plan is there, that it's kind of well, if you're holding on to too much of the old memories, then what room is there? You want to leave more room for building and fostering new memories and a new life.
That's true.
And so he gives into the big picture that's in the living room. Leave that. That's a good, but all of the pictures that are all over the place, make space for new pictures, for new memories, for new beginnings. And that's how I read that.
That makes sense to me. I was just curious. It was just a question that I had that I wasn't sure about.
Yeah.
So thanks for answering that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my last note.
All right. Well, then I think what time to go into now is I know you always like to pull together some fun behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Trivia and tidbits.
Not a lot of information, but this is what I put together for behind the scenes. Mike Flanagan did not want Before I Wake to be marketed as a horror. He wanted it to be marketed as a fable or a supernatural drama. Flanagan, ever the overachiever, also released Hush and Ouija Origin of Evil in 2016. Although originally it was scheduled for a wide release, the movie was acquired by Netflix after Relativity Media filed for bankruptcy in 2016. Somnia would have been the third film by Flanagan to use a single Latin word for a title. Absentia and Oculus are the other two. In fact, Before I Wake was filmed in the same location as Oculus. He likes the same people, same locations.
He knows what works for him.
Yeah, why fix it if it's not broken? Stick with it.
Although I don't think I've seen Thomas Jane or Kate Bosworth come back.
No, I wonder about that.
They should.
Okay, we already talked about this, but the Canker Man, of course, is revealed to be Cody's childlike and nightmarish vision of his mother when she became sick with cancer. Hence the name Canker, because when a child sees cancer written down and they're little and they're just learning to read, of course it's going to look like it's canker.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Flanagan's cameo. And Dash Myhawk, we talked about him appearing in The Day After Tomorrow. So my final tidbit is, as of April 2022, Charles Bramesco of The Guardian ranked it third in a list of the 10 scariest Netflix original films. Hush was number 10, and Gerald's Game was number 5.
Also a Flanagan fan.
Yep. And that's all I have. There really wasn't a lot out there. So we did it.
We did it. We covered it.
Yes.
Back into the Flaniverse.
Yes.
Lots of fun, lots of good stuff going on, and oh my goodness.
Here it comes.
Right on time, as it always is. Almost if I dreamt it, right?
Of course. And as long as you keep it plugged in, it should be on time from now on.
Yes, so let me get to it. All right, we do have some feedback this week. This first one is Tony following up from last week when we said, all right, you said you were going to watch the movie. Now, what'd you think? And so she's coming up with that right here. She's following up. I like that. We just kind of have our little back and forth. So Tony on Troll from last week, as she says, I finally found some time to watch Troll, and halfway through I started watching TikToks. It's not great. I did like the actual creature design.
Thanks for being honest, Tony. We appreciate it.
The friendly half of me is like, yeah, sometimes it's hard to get something to grab your attention, and if you can't get locked into it, then yeah, it's hard to watch. And then the snarky side of me is like, well, maybe watch the movie and get off your phone. But no, I get it. Because I do it sometimes too. So
I know, it's hard. So we did get a couple of messages for Before I Wake. The first one comes from Rebecca. She says, awesome. I'm putting it on my to-do list to watch this movie tomorrow. Rebecca, if you watched it, we'd love to hear what you think of it. So please send us a message for next week.
You get the same homework as we give to Tony. Let us know. I will be curious to know if you watched it and what you thought.
Yeah.
And then we have another feedback bit here for Before I Wake this week from our good friend Alma. Always good to hear from her. She's awesome. She's an awesome listener. An awesome person. I got to ride in her car in San Francisco. So that's pretty cool. Uh-huh.
You know what? I don't think we told the listeners, but I didn't end up going.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer.
It was a big bummer. I missed it.
I'll have to do it again with you sometime.
Yes. Always. More adventures, 2023. I'm down.
But anyway, Alma says, just got done watching this flick. It's pretty good. I loved the butterflies, and the few jump scares really got me. So, everyone the canker man engulfed just disappeared, never to be seen from again. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what we take from that. She goes on to say, I'm glad the mystery got pieced together. So sad to see cancer through the eyes of a really young child. I totally lost it when they showed Cody's mom before she died. I'm glad I watched this movie. Flanagan does such a great job with emotion of loss. I have totally become a big fan of his work. I look forward to hearing y'all's thoughts on this unique movie.
Thanks, Alma. I hope that you enjoyed this week's podcast. We had a really good discussion.
Yeah, it was good. And yeah, and as you've listened to this, we concur with you a lot about Flanagan and just like the way that he deals with loss and a lot of the things that, the effects that has on people is a big theme of his. And yeah, we're huge fans. We're huge Flanagans of Flanagan here.
We went through that last week, remember? I don't remember where you settled on what we're called, but something. You came up with a term.
We're Fanagans of his shenanigans. I said that either last week setting this up or during this episode. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was last week setting it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these aren't the only, we've already covered Hush. We've covered this one.
Yeah.
There are still more that we can cover, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we'll definitely be back with more Flanagan.
So if you'd like to submit feedback like Tony, Rebecca, or Alma, you can do so a number of ways. You can find us on our Facebook and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. You can tweet at us at our FYL Podcast. Email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we really do. And of course, talking about sharing the love, got to give a couple of shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. First, my other podcast, Strange Indeed. I know I have been pitching the fact that we are going to be going into Mayfair Witches the past couple of weeks. And then kind of right here last minute in this week, we made like the cast of Friends moving furniture and we decided to pivot. And again, I don't know much about the property and the stories and stuff itself, but Rima is a huge fan of it, and she watched kind of the advanced, release of the first episode, and promptly messaged me and our other guests you're going to have on, and was like, "Yeah, we're not covering this show." She was pretty devastated with the way that they changed a lot of things in a not great way, and she just was not happy with it, and kind of making this decision. She's going back and covering a bunch of other shows coming up pretty soon with other Podcastica stuff, and just didn't want to dedicate the time to a show she was going to be hate watching and not enjoying, and I can't blame her for that. And so, yeah, so no Mayfair Witches. So if you are a fan of that show and have been watching it, I am sorry we will not be covering it. Hopefully you find somewhere to listen to that if somebody's doing that. However, I know we will be back over on Strange New before too long. We're still kind of taking a little break, but season 4 comes back in February. So I say comes back. You comes back with season 4. Makes more sense grammatically. In February. And I'm sure, we'll be jumping into that. We've been covering that show. So we will be back soon enough, I promise. And we've got other seasons of shows coming up. I'm just waiting for an announcement of season 2 of Sweet Tooth.
Me too.
I'm excited for that whenever that.
But you know what? Next month we'll be covering a movie that stars the main star from Sweet Tooth.
Yeah. Yeah, Christian Convery is in something. And that's all we're going to give you as a tease, because I guess somebody could just look him up on IMDb and maybe figure it out. And if you do that kind of homework, then you'll get maybe a hint on something fun we're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be
ridiculous.
Great. Yeah, it is, but I'm in for it, aren't you?
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Oh, it looks absolutely insane, and I love it.
Yes. So yeah, keep an eye on there. There's a little tease for you coming up. I guess it's coming out on like streaming and stuff to where we'll be able to have access to it pretty soon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, other than that, now I can say, I shout out stuff that's going out on Podcastica. Officially this week, other podcasts that are on the same network that we're on, Podcastica, because this is our first episode as part of Podcastica, and so I'm super excited about that. If you noticed when clicking on the episode this week in whatever podcast player you listen to, if you looked at our podcast art, it looks a little different this week. There might be an extra logo on there besides ours. So yeah, I'm really excited. That's really cool. So we've been giving shout outs to Podcastica since the beginning of time anyway, but now we can say other podcasts on our network that we're here on, and I'm so glad to be on. It's got a bunch of other stuff going on. Of course, The Cast of Us is its first official episode of The Last of Us on HBO will be up before you hear the next episode of this podcast in this next week. So
excited for this show.
The premiere of The Last of Us is this weekend on Sunday night. So God, I'm so stoked to watch it. I cannot wait.
I know,
hear their coverage.
So much fun.
And they should have an episode. If it's not up right now as you're listening to this, then it should be up super soon. But going into it, having Ben, our good friend Ben, that we love so much, on that podcast, they're having a little debate episode where they're going to be kind of debating and talking about what constitutes a zombie and a zombie film and zombie property. So what really are zombies? And I gave some thoughts on that and some feedback. I don't know if they'll read mine on there or not, but I'll be listening to see if my input on that conversation gets included. But I'm interested to hear what they say.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts because I don't know that we've ever discussed it before. Right. So definitely interested in hearing what your thoughts are, because I know Ben is very steadfast in what he believes. Right.
So that one should be an interesting one to listen to. I'm excited. So
yeah,
hopefully that will be up before the first episode. I think they're working on that. So stay tuned. So it might be up now. It's not as we're recording this, but it might be up when you're hearing this. And then, yeah, definitely Sunday night, watch The Last of Us on HBO and check out The Cast of Us to hear them talk about that. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
Also, another new Podcastica podcast that got added to the roster just right before we did is It's Showtime, folks. And that one is just talking about movies in general, any other movies. So maybe we'll pop on there and talk some movies that are not Run for Your Lives movies that we just want to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
But this week you can go over there and you can catch Kristen and Wendy talking about the new Avatar, The Way of Water. They've both seen that, and I think both loved that a lot. So they are talking about that one. So if you're a fan of that, go check out that podcast over there. Also here on Podcastica, 1923 cast, Jerry and Alex talking episode 4 of the Yellowstone prequel series, 1923. And that is also on YouTube if you want to watch a video version of them talking about it. That's how I watched it. It was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. I have officially, as of like this last week, caught up on all things Yellowstone, and I'm really excited. So we might even be covering something in the next few weeks based solely off of my love of Yellowstone that I was like, yeah, we got to do it now. So, and you'll see what that is when we get there.
Yes.
Because I will definitely talk about that when we're covering the movies. And, of course, lastly, give a little shout out to TV Podcast Industries, big Star Wars nerds over there. So, with the Bad Batch Season 2 out on Disney Plus right now, they are covering that. They're on episode 3 this week. So if you're a Star Wars fan watching The Bad Batch, definitely check out TV Podcast Industries and their coverage. They do an incredible job over there. But now, give a little tee up to you for what's going on next week. Let's see. Can you serve us a dish on what to expect for next week?
When Tyler takes his date to a secluded island to experience an expensive meal, she seems to be the only one who notices that there's more to the evening than a multiple-course meal. It's sinister. We are mulling over the 2022 film The Menu, which was directed by Mark Mylod and released just last month.
Mm-hmm. So that one will be very interesting. Let's see. I think it caters to the palate of this podcast. So
definitely. It does.
So we'll chew on that one for a little bit. It'll be fun.
I remember when we recorded this one, we were both starving at the end.
Yeah. So much food. So many foodie goodness things in that movie. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for sure it's the only episode that we've ever done where the main character was not a human. With that, we've reached the end of another fun episode. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.